So, folks, we need to talk about OPEC. It's a group that you might not know about, but it controls a lot about the prices at your local gas station. It is a group responsible for controlling roughly a quarter of the world's oil supply, and they have typically worked together, a huge group of different nations, to control oil production, to help control prices so that it doesn't fluctuate all over the place, and that in turn smooths out production, makes income more reliable, also reduces the likelihood that there's going to be a oil collapse around the price of the commodity, which has happened in the past. This, in turn, is something that has, in fact, actually caused the collapse of different countries in the past. And we've lived in kind of this bubble of relative stability. Now, of course, it is also a tool that has been used to oppress different people. It's not wholly a good thing. I don't want to be painting a rosy picture about what OPEC does or is. For those of you who don't know, it stands for the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. It incorporates a large number of different countries: Algeria, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and up until a couple days ago, the United Arab Emirates. One thing that has been weighing heavily on different OPEC countries, it's twofold. Number one, a lot of these OPEC countries, you might notice, are actually very much affected by the Iranian closure of the Strait of Hormuz, meaning that their oil can't be transported out, and they represent a significant proportion of the global oil economy. And in fact, many countries almost wholly rely on the oil exported through the Strait of Hormuz in order to continue operating. Countries like South Korea, for example. Entire countries are running on this energy. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has put a huge economic pressure on the countries that are receiving the oil, but also on the countries that are exporting the oil. Because if they can't export it, then they can't get paid. And if the oil exports are the majority of what they export, then it turns out they're really kind of fucked right now. Imagine if, the United States just stopped generating revenue for, half the year, or even a quarter of the year. It would be devastating when it comes to the services that it could provide, the ability to do simple things like pay troops, pay employees, etc., etc., etc. It's a big problem. And not only that, you also have the overarching geopolitical reality, which is climate change is destroying the globe. And so a lot of these different OPEC countries have been trying to use the immense wealth generated by oil production in order to diversify their economies, in order to, generate new industries, invest in green infrastructure, etc. Because if they don't, when oil is inevitably phased out in the coming decades, out of necessity, they're going to be fucked. And they know this, right? And so part of the issue here for the United Arab Emirates is they don't really have a super diversified economy. Saudi Arabia has been making strides in that regard, but while still, of course, a lot of their revenue being generated by oil exports. But the UAE does not have that. And effectively, they announced a couple days ago that effective May 1st, they are pulling out of OPEC. Now, this is a big deal because the United Arab Emirates, despite being incredibly small, accounts for a non-negligible amount of global oil production. We're talking Last I checked, it was quite a bit. UAE global oil production. 1 second. Let's just take a quick look here. Yes. The UAE produces about 3.1 million barrels of oils per day, which makes it like one of the the third or fourth largest producer of oil in the world. Oh, sorry, the eighth largest oil producer, and accounts for about 4% of the world's oil production. That gives them an immense amount of leverage. It was a really big deal. It accounts for almost, a sixth of the entire OPEC coalition's capacity. And so what we're looking at this point in time is a diminishing of the importance of OPEC, which might seem like a fairly abstract issue. But the reason the UAE is moving away from OPEC is because they want to set their own prices. They want to take advantage of variable prices in the oil market to sell or manufacture as much oil as possible so that they can make a bunch of money. It's all about the money, right? Now, why would they want to do that? Well, number one, because they have realized that the United States and its security protections largely have not stopped Iran from, raining down missiles and drones on the UAE. And that is presenting a huge problem from just like an internal security point of view, but also because they want that giant influx of cash. They want to use that to be able to diversify their economy, right? So this is considered to be in their best interest, at least internally within the UAE. And what it means for OPEC is that OPEC has a lot less leverage when setting prices, setting manufacturing quotas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Now, how does this affect the United States? Well, in the short term, it's going to mean that your oil costs go wonky. In the past, day, oil prices have shot up like 50 cents in response to this. But also, a more important and more subtle and more long-term effect is represented in the fact that OPEC and the deals that OPEC has with the United States have largely formed the foundation of what is called the petrodollar. It is the arrangement between the United States and Saudi Arabia that basically provides security guarantees for Saudi Arabian oil production and, by extension, a lot of OPEC's oil production as well. And that petrodollar is essentially the Saudi Arabian government saying, okay, we will only trade oil and price oil in US dollars. And what that means is, you have this globalization of the dollar. So all countries are doing business with the US dollar. They are trading internationally with the US dollar. And that in turn strengthens the use case of the US dollar. It means the US dollar is stronger. It retains its value more because more people use it. And more people are obtaining US dollars. This is something that has historically kept US soft power incredibly, incredibly strong. And it has allowed the United States to do a lot of different things that other countries might not be able to do with their economic power. An example of this is practices like quantitative easing, where the United States can effectively print money without a bunch of the historical downsides because of the mass adoption and the globalization of the dollar. This has been a source of strength for the US economy. Whether you recognize it or not, it's actually been a huge asset to the United States, both domestically and internationally. One of the really interesting things, along with the UAE leaving OPEC, is the other day we had a story. Let me see if I can pull this up. Do I still have it prepped? Believe I do. Ooh. Yes. So, number one, all of this is compounded by the fact that the president of the United States is just constantly lying and threatening and just generally acting like a fucking crazy person because his brain is melting and he's stupid as hell. He didn't have much of one to begin with. This is from yesterday. Iran has just informed us that they are in a state of collapse. They want us to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. There's no evidence that this is at all true. Nothing, no information out of Iran indicates any part of this is true. They are not begging for the Strait of Hormuz to be open. They have locked down the Strait of Hormuz. Like, this is just nonsense. This is like some, okay, grandpa, let's get you back into the home. Shit. Like, it's not real. But more than that, like, Donald Trump is just straight up threatening to go, like, to start shooting at Iran again. Here he is on Truth Social at 3:05 in the morning. Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. President DJT. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Picture of Donald Trump with a fucking assault rifle as villages get bombed behind him. Like, this is just insane. And what it does is it means that global leaders and global markets stop relying on what Donald Trump says. Because it's just lies, it's just bravado, it's just propaganda. What that then translates to is a great deal of, uncertainty, etc., etc., etc. Where is the certainty coming from in this conflict right now? It's coming from the Iranian government. Donald Trump, acting like an insane, crazy person who cannot be reasoned with, means that Iran, in this case, is the one that is being relied on for stability. What does that mean for oil production? Why am I even talking about all of this in relation to OPEC and the UAE? Well, part of the reason this is a really big deal is because the tolls that Iran has been charging these oil shipments has been in Chinese Yuan. And what that is effectively doing is establishing an international system wherein oil is instead being traded not in the dollar, but in the yuan. If you have been listening to what I just said, the de-dollarization of the global economy is not going to be something that is going to be felt well. It's not going to be a good, positive thing for those of you who live within the United States. It is actively going to weaken the dollar, and it is actively going to lessen the influence the United States has abroad. Now, this is a great thing if you oppose U.S. imperialism, of course, but if you are focused on things like domestic policies, funding different domestic initiatives, being able to, actually address affordability concerns, this is actually going to be quite damaging. So China is the world's economic superpower now? That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that this is kickstarting a process that Iran was already engaged in. A lot of people don't necessarily know this, but one of Iran's main exports to China is about 95% of Iran's oil goes to China. China has an arrangement with Iran where they buy 95% of Iran's oil, historically. Pre-blockade, I'm not sure what it is now. And then China, after buying that oil, then distributes it to other countries around the world, kind of acting as a middleman, getting around different sanctions on Iranian oil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what this is doing is bringing other countries within kind of that Strait of Hormuz area into that similar arrangement, where if they are not directly selling to China, they are still having to set the price of their oil and pay tolls according to their oil amounts in Chinese yuan. And so this all comes together to bring in several other countries into this arrangement. And that's going to lead to what's called de-dollarization, um, where the dollar is adopted by fewer and fewer countries, um, and presumably where China, where the United States has been gutting our soft power, U.S. aid, etc., all of the initiatives that actually helped people and fostered goodwill. China has had for a very long time its own soft imperialism, its own soft power initiatives. The Belt and Road Initiative is a big example of one. And what that means is the void left by a lack of US soft power is going to be filled, probably, if I had to take a guess, by Chinese soft power. I'm not trying to say here that China is the new superpower. We're all hail the petro-yuan. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that there is a process that is likely beginning right now, especially with the way that the US economy, the United States geopolitics are being run by the Trump administration, the broken agreements, the unreliability, the chaos being sown into the markets. It's creating a heavy incentive for other countries to not want to have anything to do with the United States for the foreseeable future. And so what I'm arguing here is not necessarily like, oh, the petrodollar is dead, the US dollarization of the world is gone, etc. But what I am trying to put forward here is that there is an ongoing and worsening state of US power abroad that is going to have pretty profound economic effects, not in the near term, but in the long term. I would say within 10 to 15 years, this instability is still going to be reverberating throughout the global economy and governing different decisions that other countries are making with respect to their economic arrangements. So that's kind of what I'm saying. This isn't necessarily, you go on Blue Sky, you see a bunch of folks being like, "Oh, hail the petro-yuan." That's not what's happening exactly, but we're seeing a process beginning that, if competent leadership isn't reasserted pretty quickly, is going to take on a life of its own. And what that might turn into in the future is anybody's guess, but it's going to result in a weakening of the US dollar abroad, the instability within the US domestic markets, etc. It's going to be a problem. David Cliff, thank you for the $10 super chat. I'm pro-Iran, but the petrodollar is a bit of outdated analysis, and China's economic system isn't ready to become the global reserve currency because you have to be a constant importer and many exports. And that's correct. The China's economic system isn't ready right now to become the global reserve currency. But they've been taking steps to try and build a foundation where it could. I think that if you give them another 10, 15, 20 years, they might have that foundation in place, especially as we see manufacturing shift from China and get outsourced to other countries around the world that have less wealth to throw around. All I'm saying is, if you are someone who is invested in the US economic system being able to function in the near term, this isn't great because of the effects on oil prices. If you are invested in the US economy in the long term being relatively stable or a stabilizing effect on the global markets, Donald Trump may have blown a hole in the US currency's ability to do that. That's kind of where we're at. Insane how much China has profited by doing nothing and letting Trump destroy himself. I mean, that is kind of, yes, essentially. And I'm not like a China stan. I'm not here being like, yes, all hail the second coming of Mao. Like that I'm not that kind of girl. But I am here to tell you that some very real economic damage has been done here by Iran simply locking down the Strait of Hormuz. And Donald Trump, every day that this goes on, is simply giving Iran more and more leverage and putting more and more pressure on OPEC countries, putting more and more pressure on this coalition that has historically sided with the United States. Ultimately, guys, buckle in. Make America Great Again is destroying the United States on a global scale. It's actually deeply ironic. So, all that being said, let me know what you thought in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe, organize. Join your local Democrats. Make them more progressive. Kick out the Hakeem Jeffries on the local level, okay? Join your local DSA. Make it more effective. If you need help, you can join our Discord. We'll help you get set up with your local Dems and your local DSA. We'll walk you through it. We'll help you get the help and advice you need. We have different group chats dedicated to organizing Dems inside this community and also organizing DSA members inside this community. We want to give you the tools to make your community better, because when you make your community better, you also build the foundation to make your state better, to make your country better, and overall, the only way we get out of the deep level of fuckery we are all oppressed under right now is by organizing together and building a lasting movement and coalition. Full stop. There's a lot of bad shit that has happened today in the United States domestically. We'll talk about that later. The only way out, there is only one fucking way out, and that is by organizing. Get involved with that. And last but not least, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary friendos. Go check it out. It is non-tucking lingerie. It is sexy. It fits. Go check it out. ImogeneOlivia.com. Link down in the description. And let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the scenes. Politics, being plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat.